Well, good morning. Welcome to Buddha's in Your Landfill. I've wound my father's timepiece, which is my little ritual for the morning. I guess I'm a ritual kind of person. I like winding this because it gives me a feeling that I'm in touch with time, and I'm not run by time. I'm winding time. This is my time. I can wind it up, you see, rather than running to keep up with it. So in the other little ritual that I've begun to enjoy is that each morning I open up a haiku by Baso, and I guess that's the way you pronounce it, and which is a Zen master who was the master of writing haikus, and so I find it very inspirational in helping me formulate the idea for this talk. But let's pick up where we left off yesterday, and then we can pull that cotton ball down the road a little bit and pull it out some more. And yesterday we left off with the Oscars and Warren Beatty in that great metaphorical moment where Warren Beatty could not choose who the winner was. Not that he didn't choose, but he couldn't announce who the winner was, you see. There was a oscillation, you could see it, in a space there where he could not act because there was a conflict. There was a doubt. Is this the winner or is it not the winner? You see. There is an either or a split in the one that created a oscillation, or what I call a schizophrenic break in the mind where it was going wow, 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 wow. So Faith Dunaway chided him a little bit and said, "Oh, Warren, you can't lift the hammer." And so he gave it to her like, "Here, I'm relieved." And she said, "It's La La Land." Okay. Well, we know how that turned out. But this is also such a great La La Land. Was always a metaphor for California, where people kind of lifted off the ground of certainty and sanity and floated off into alternative realities. So it was La La Land. So La La Land is kind of like that metaphor for, ooh, la la, he's kind of like lifted off. And also La La is interesting because it's got two laws. It's not La Land, right? There would be one law, but it's two laws. La La Land. So there are two here, two laws in the land that are the same, but there are two. You see, isn't that interesting? There's one law, but it's now two. So that was kind of like a way of describing Warren Beatty's mind, which was La La, which is the true law. They're both equal. La La, La La. Is it La or is it La? I don't know. It's La La. You see? So that's when the mind falls into this oscillation, and we do this all the time. I do it all the time. I mean, this is like, I'm constantly slipping into a La La land when I can't open up something, or I can't fix something that should be simple, and I should know how to do it, but I don't. Should know, but I don't know. And my father stands behind me, and I can hear him saying, "You can't lift the hammer, can you?" Right? Wow, 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 wow. So he raises it. Let me do that. Boom. So my little neurosis has always been, when I get into a La La land, I call tech support, or the wife fixes it, or somebody fixes it, so that we all kind of understand that when we get in a La La land, we need a savior or a fixer who comes in and says, "It's La La Land," like Faye Donnelly. And we smile, being relieved of the pain of La La Land. This is a very painful place because we lose self. We lose center. I don't know who I am if I can't choose. You see, I'm a loser. If I can't, I can't I can't lift the hammer. I love that commercial. Hope everyone has seen it, I hope, the GE commercial, where the son comes to the family, having achieved, having arrived at a place of power where he's a programmer, and the father says, well, that's great, son. You need your grandpappy's hammer. Here, come, boom. And this is physical, you see. And then he quivers a little bit, and you can't lift the hammer, can you? You can't be one, can you? You're in La La Land. Okay. So we'll leave this with the idea. This is important to understand, that the la comes when you have conflicting la-las. I should know, but I don't know. I should know, but I don't know. Or is it left or is it right? Each la has a different frame of reference or story. This is really important. And these both come from the past. Okay? So the la-las conflict and can't become one la because each has a different contradictory reference to a story. And the stories all come from memory and the past. So when we get caught in a la-la, it's because we have conflicting stories from memory. So let's go from there and pick up to what's in today's news. Well, what's in today's news is Trump's State of the Union speech. And what struck me visually was you have the one nation, the one Congress, the one law with two laws. You got the Democrats and you got the Republicans. La, one land. But you got two laws. So one applauds, one sits down. One stands up, one sits, you see. And it was just the reverse when Obama was president. The Republicans sat, the Democrats got up. Boom, 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 boom. It's a seesaw. It's La La Land, because there are two laws. So let's dig into this a little bit, okay? And have fun with this. If you can't have fun with reality, what good is life? You know what I mean? So the koan for today, not the koan, the haiku. I call it in my when I write these, I getting high on ku. So the haiku for today is: a weathered skeleton in windy fields of memory, piercing like a knife. A weathered skeleton. This is a feeling in an image. A weathered skeleton. Maybe the poet was walking in a field and there was a tree bare, looked like a skeleton. A weathered skeleton in a windy field of memory. Right there you get the cold past, the skeleton of the past, and connecting it with memory. Piercing like a knife. The knife cuts me, okay? So getting back to this idea of the story of my law, there's two laws, and each law has a story. My law has a story. The other law has its story, you see. And it can be either personal, fight with my wife or my neighbor, or my religious fight with another religion. Whatever the fight is, whatever the contest, whatever the conflict, it comes from two stories. Or two me's, because we'll expand that in a minute. But the idea right here is that the weathered skeleton is a story from my memory. The story's not in the future. The memory, the past, which is a placeholder for me, is the piercing like a knife. So the past story of me, which is what I belong to, my political story, my religious story, my family story, my story in my marriage, all of these stories are layered like a Russian nesting doll, you see. All of them pierce me like a knife. They pierce me like a knife. That's interesting because the knife is piercing me. My past is piercing me to what? To wake me up. You see? That it's just a dead skeleton. So why does the past frame the present? Now this gets back to this idea of the on the previous one where where you have the split mind. It's split between two stories. Okay, two laws, la, and each has a frame of reference that is contradictory to the other one. So the story, getting back to our little State of the Union speech, so you got the left story and the right story. So the present moment, which is the speech, everybody's behavior is framed by their story of who they are as Democrats and Republicans. So whenever we get into a fight, it's basically with neighbor, with the wife, with the friend, with the politics on Facebook, yeah, la land. There is always a tale of two stories. And the stories can be boiled down to me and not me. And each side of the conflict is a me, and the other side is not me. Isn't that interesting? Because you got these. The only way for me to be me is to have a story of me, and in that story is like the nesting dolls, Russian nesting dolls. A story of me and my immediate family, the story of me and my larger extended family, the story of me and my community, religion, politics, American story, a Western European story, or South American story, or all of these different stories just keep getting bigger and bigger, but they all give a placeholding for the sense of me. Like you have a table full of placemats and me sits at the head. And the other story comes in and says, I want a seat. And you say, no, this is my story, my reality, my law. And the other one says, well, I'm law too. And he tries to pull the chair out. So these two skeletons basically fighting for a seat at the table because there can only be one table setting. You can't have two table settings at the same time. You can only have one. So who's going to set the table? What story is going to set the table of reality? But the problem is we're in relationships, so there is, as long as we are dividing reality into two stories, which we have to do because reality is relationship, we're in conflict because the story must be one. You can't have two stories of reality. There's only one reality, but the impossible happens and it divides into two. So you have this tremendous tension between the two laws to come together and become one. But neither one can find the one because it would have to eliminate the other law. You see? This is the paradox of life. This is the enigma. This is the Zen koan. This is the Gordian knot that we have to cut in order to be free. We have to see that happening in all levels of our life, where it's basically me at war with me, or la at war with la. And that creates a la-la land in which reality is lifted off the ground, you see. So how do we get back to the ground? Does now have to have a story? Does the ground have to have a story? Does this moment have to have a story, you see? This moment doesn't have a story unless we reference this moment to the past and my story of this moment, how it should be. Now this moment has a story, but the story is a skeleton, a weathered skeleton that's piercing me with a knife, you see, because I'm not in the moment, in my flesh and blood moment of now, which has no story. It's just now. It's just this, you see. So the question there is a tension we call it stress, tension. There is a tension between the two stories to discover the one, to arrive at or discover the one that is not two. And that gets back to the imperatives that we talked about the other day. There is the imperative to be the one, the unique one, you know, number one. This is the American imperative, be number one. But number one means without a second. One without a second. So that means I'm compelled to find the story that has no second. But everywhere I turn, there's the other story. You see how this just creates this kicking the can down the road from we think we've arrived at the one and the two comes up again. We think we finally have the la, like Warren Beatty, when Faye Dunaway said it's La La Land. That's the one story that was the truth, and everybody smiled, but it wasn't. You see, I thought that was so fascinating, you know. We need to kind of like understand, see conflict in the framework of a tale of two stories, like fighting like tomcats to be the one story, but they can't, because they try to become the one story by eliminating the other story, and you can't, and everything is, you are eliminating half your own being, you see. You can't cut the egg and have two eggs out of one. It's one egg, and it includes both halves. So the one must be, the one has to be a creative act. In other words, in order to arrive at the one, you can't arrive at the one by eliminating the other story. You have to create a new story that includes both. You have to create a new you that includes all of your stories. You have to create a new, and I frame this like being born again. You have to born yourself again. Nobody can born you. You have to born yourself again in seeing the world with yourself in it without referencing it to a story. As soon as you reference yourself to the story, you are referencing yourself to the weathered skeleton in a field, in windy fields of memory, and you feel the piercing of the knife of truth, that you are being referenced by the dead past, that you are being determined by the past. And that is not a creative life. That is not living in the present moment. That is always new and always creative and always wondrous and always whole. So let's leave us with that today, and I'll see you tomorrow. And may you find a Buddha